Hey friends, Kevin here, and today we're going to talk about 10 things. 10 mistakes that people make when they're doing their van build. And this is whether they're doing a cargo van, they're converting into a camper van, or they're doing a minivan and they're converting into a camper van. So this applies to whatever type of van you happen to be using. Let's get to it. And when you're looking at other people's builds, you almost need a devil and an angel sitting on your shoulder talking to you. Because you're going to have one voice that's going, hey, that looks awesome. And you need the other voice to sit there and go, you know, how's that going to work out in the real world? Mistake number 1. And this is important to keep in mind if you're not a truck driver and if you've never pulled trailers and things behind your vehicle. And it is this, doing a build to where you are reducing your visibility. Because I see these things all the time, and I see especially these young people, they are doing these builds and everything is at the back of their vehicle all the way up to the ceiling. They completely lose being able to look out of the back window when they're driving down the highway, to where they are now going to have to rely on mirrors. If you're not used to that, that's going to be a problem. If you're not used to that, that can cause accidents. So you have a back window there for a reason. Make sure in your build that you leave visibility there, that you can look through that mirror and see through your vehicle and see out the back window. Number 2, using building materials that are too heavy. It's nice that we all want to have a house on wheels, but if you're running a full-size van that has a very basic and not a heavy-duty suspension, or you're running a minivan, it wasn't made, the suspension and the tires and everything, the brakes weren't made for the type of weight that I see a lot of these people put into this. So they come in, they gut all the little plastic materials out, and they use this unbelievably heavy wood that they're putting everywhere. This is going to throw off the front rear balance. It can cause just all kinds of problems. So there's nothing wrong with doing a build where you're doing all wood inside, but you need to be using lightweight materials. There are things like pine for trim and wood panels, and a lot like this that's a fairly lightweight material. And you start factoring that, especially in a large van, you're adding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of additional pounds in there. Now you can make the argument that, well, I took the seats out and that's going to offset things. And in some cases that may be true. But I've seen some of these where people have really gone overboard with, and they've used very solid, very heavy materials again, with a lot of cabinets on top of it, a lot of cabinetry. And while what they've made is absolutely beautiful, at least sitting in their driveway, it just may not work out in the real world. Number 3, not thinking about how they're going to cook and setting themselves up to only have an outside kitchen. In a minivan, it's going to be hard to cook inside. As a matter of fact, I don't recommend it for the most part, and even a full-size van. I'll be perfectly honest, I really don't want to be running propane or butane cooking with an open flame inside of a vehicle. That's my choice. But again, now my big van, it has a propane stove built into it, and that's fine. And the difference is it's sturdy. It's in its own area. It has metal behind it and around the sides of it. It has metal over top of it. There's no way that a flame is going to get away on that. But I see people with these little propane and butane burners, and they're trying to balance this and this little thing and this big pot, and they're trying to balance it on something. It looks like they're playing Jenga and trying to stack this stuff up. It's not safe in that it can fall back over on you. It's not safe that it can fall over in another direction, and you have the potential to start a fire that way. So in smaller vehicles, I'm not a big fan of cooking inside. With that said, you're going to run into situations where it's raining or it's really, really, really windy, unbelievably windy in some parts of the country at certain times of the year, that cooking outside on one of these isn't going to be an option either. So you're going to have to get creative. One, you're going to have foods with you that you don't have to cook if you get into that situation. Or two, you're going to have to go find an area that you can do this a little bit easier. Find something with a shelter, maybe pull into the space in a car wash to get the wind off or get out of the rain for a few minutes. You're going to have to do something like that in order to be able to cook. But if you're out and the only food that you have with you are food that requires cooking and the weather turns on you, you're not going to be a very happy person, or you're going to start taking shortcuts and doing dangerous things because you feel like you don't have a choice. And that's where bad problems crop up. Number 4, a complicated bed setup. I have seen people in builds, I have met people out on the road with this, and they have these beds and they have these things converted into benches and into this and into that. And all of these great things they can do with it that looks really slick, hinges that go in both directions, all these different things. That's really cool, except if you are like most people, you don't want to spend 20 minutes trying to put your bed together every night and 20 minutes taking it apart every morning. So keep things simple, or if you're doing that, if you want to do that, that's fine. But think about how long it's going to take you to convert something into a bed the way you're planning on doing it. And think about whether you're going to be happy spending that much time actually doing this stuff. Number 5. And this goes kind of into the same thing, kind of goes along with the bed part of it, is simply having too much stuff and having to move everything every night. Because if you have too much stuff with you and the bed or your seating area is piled full, all of that stuff has to go somewhere, either outside or be moved to the front seats and all that before you can make your bed. And it's really annoying when you're tired and you want to go to bed and you have to do that. And I can tell you that was a mistake that I made early on. And it's a mistake I've seen a lot of other people make. And, when you're new to this and you have everything is exciting when you're new to this. But after you're at it for a few weeks straight, the stuff will start to annoy you that you did wrong. And one of those things was that. When you're doing your own build, again, you need to plan this stuff out between, hey, that looks awesome, and how's that really going to work in the real world? Number 6, and this kind of falls in the same thing, so I'm going to hit it quick, but it's just having everything junked up and cluttered, because that's going to be kind of depressing if you're a hoarder in your minivan or your camper van. And especially in bad weather when you're stuck in there with everything that you own surrounding you. That's not the situation you want to be in. It's going to be depressing, and it's just going to get aggravating because you're constantly having to move stuff, or you're constantly having to figure out where stuff is. Because I can't remember, because I used to keep it here and now I keep it over here, and I used to keep it here, but I had to move it somewhere else in order to, you just don't want to be in that situation. Keep things simple. Keep things that you have to have out or close to you, and keep those other things put away. And most importantly, decide what you simply don't need with you on the road and get rid of it. Number 7, not using Reflectix on windows. You need some type of window shades. Unless you have a van that was already converted that has some types of curtains and things, you're going to need something to keep people from looking in at you. But the other thing you're going to need is something to reflect the sun in the summer. Now, granted, in the winter, this will also help a little bit with keeping heat in, but this is more for summer. And I'm going to do a whole video on this Reflectix stuff later, and I'm going to put links down in the comment section for where to get this stuff. But basically, you just cut it. You cut it a little bit bigger than the window. It's kind of like bubble wrap that has foil on each side. That's the way to think of it. It's very lightweight. It's flexible. And you're going to stick this stuff in the window. And the reason why is in the summer, the sun is going to come and it's going to start beating down on you wherever you are parked. Unless you're lucky enough to be in an area completely under trees. But when you're traveling, trust me, there are states out there that don't have any trees, like Kansas. So you're going to need, when you're parked, to have this stuff. And what you're going to do when the sun is beating on this side of the vehicle, you're going to have your Reflectix on your windows on that side of the vehicle. So all that heat isn't beating through into your van. And as the sun moves around through the day, you just move which windows you have the Reflectix in, which only takes a few seconds because you've have them custom fit to each window. That's going to make a world of difference in your comfort level and in the temperature inside of your van. But I've met people, again, out on the road, I've met people in the desert who have absolutely no window coverings whatsoever. And they're just sitting there baking and they're miserable. Number 8. Either prepare for bugs or prepare to leave where you are. Now, dealing with bugs, and I'm talking mosquitoes basically here, unless you have some type of really fine mesh screening, you're not going to be able to open your doors in some areas. But I've learned a lot of things being on the road. For example, I've learned that there's parts of Arkansas that have rice paddies. And they have these in town and right next to a town. I didn't know they had rice paddies in the United States. The only time I had ever heard this term was Vietnam during the war. I didn't know this was something that went on here where you have this all the time year round and breeding mosquitoes out of it. And there are towns there that apparently people just can't even go outside that have to live there. So it's an odd thing, but you're going to run into that. You're going to run into that in certain areas and certain times of year. I don't really have a good solution for you. I'll tell you what mine is. I don't fight it. That's what my solution is anymore. If I end up somewhere that everybody is being eaten up with mosquitoes, I leave. And sometimes you don't have to leave far. You may only have to go a couple of miles away, or 5 miles away, or 10 miles away to get out of that area and get into another area where the bugs simply aren't going to be a problem. Your other solution is to have these pop-up tents and shelters with bug screens and all of this stuff. More trouble than it's worth, takes up more space than I want to devote to carrying one of those. Again, that's my personal preference. But you need to think about this when you're traveling 3 out of the 4 seasons, how you're going to deal with this situation when you run into it. And again, the simplest solution for me is just to go somewhere else. Number 9. Compressed gas inside of the van. Now, I carry little 1-pound propane canisters, a couple of them in my minivan, and I have fire extinguishers and everything to go with it to be safe. I'm not worried about a little 1-pound canister, but I don't want a 20-pound or larger canister inside with me. And I see a lot of people do this in their van builds. There's a reason why on RVs that these canisters are outside. They are in a side compartment or they are underneath the van because they're not made to be inside with you. And I know a lot of people are going to argue with me over this point, and that's your right. And if you've done this, that's your right too. But I'm just going to state that I am not going to do this. End of story. I am not riding around with a 20-pound or larger propane cylinder sitting there next to me, sitting there under me, stuck under my bed, whatever the case may be. Number 10, not having a hard floor surface. This is for people who are doing a conversion of any type. If you're doing that, do a hard surface. If you want something soft to walk on, then throw you a little rug or something down over it, because it's going to be much easier to clean. Now, those of us with minivans or conversion vans that came from the factory that way, we may have those fully carpeted areas. It's up to you whether to take those out. I can tell you that in the minivan, I don't. And the reason I don't is because in the minivan, my bed being full pretty much takes up all of that floor space. So it's not as much of an issue. In my big van, where I have room to walk around, it's already a hard surface in those main areas, and the other areas are carpeted. I will tell you, it is much harder for me to clean those carpeted areas than it is the area that has a hard surface on it. So if you're making a choice and you're doing a build of what you're going to do, instead of going with a full carpet, go with a hard surface and then throw rugs or something on top of it that you can easily pick up and take outside and shake out. Because pulling sand out of a carpet is hard. So if you get to some type of beach area, you get to some type of coastal area, you're in the desert, you're just going to have that, just pounds and pounds and pounds of that stuff is going to get tracked in and be trapped in your carpet. So a hard surface is better if you're doing this for the long run. If you're starting out and what you have is carpeted, don't fret it, don't worry about it. But if you're doing a conversion of some type and putting some thought into how you want to do it, switch to a hard surface. Let me know down in the comment section what you think I left out, or what you think that you agree with that I said, or what you think what you don't agree with. It's all right not to agree. It's all right not to agree with me. It's all right to have a different opinion. But when you're putting these opinions out there, remember also that I'm doing a lot of this for people who are just now starting out with van life. It's different once you have a lot of experience. It's different if you have unlimited money. It's different for a lot of these things. But think about the way that the average person starting out that's never done this before, doesn't have an unlimited bank account, is having to deal with and solve these problems. Never hesitate to let me know what I can do for you, or if you have video ideas, something that you would like to see me cover. If it's something I actually know about, I will be happy to make a video on and do that. If it's of interest to you and of interest to other people, we'll talk soon.